And now, Lynn Matthews with our invocation.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, may those assembled here today enjoy the many offerings of rotary. May we abide by the rules we have established, those of trust, fellowship, and ethics, and may we place service above self in our daily endeavors. Also, may we always test ourselves and our efforts to be sure they are the truth, good for all concerned, of benefit to mankind, and provide peace and understanding. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Glenn. And now to introduce our visiting Rotarians and guests.
Happy Monday, everybody. And so today we have two visiting Rotarians. We have from the Lexington Club, we have J.R. Parrish. T.R. Parrish. Sorry, and then the other one is Mr. Beaver Hardy from the East Columbia Club. Now, if you have any guests with you, go ahead and stand up and we will get the mic to you.
Good afternoon, I'm Cheryl Swanson, and I'm proud to have Jason Alvin, Executive Director of our CPP, with us today. Welcome, Jason.
I'm Rusty Pass, and my guest today is John Stringfellow, who is a direct sales executive at Main Street software firm here. He's located here in Columbia, and he is also the Archon of Providence Road at SAE.
Hi everybody, I'm Dot Lyle. It's my pleasure to introduce my guest today. Many of you know Henry Costa. Henry is a retired businessman here in our city. He's a former Rotarian and if needs to reconsider, come back with us. Because I can tell you, I've watched him today, enjoyed seeing so many of you here. Let me tell you my association very quickly with Henry. Of course, you all know that I'm art league, so when I hear of something to do with art, I go right away to check it out. So that's how I find Henry. Henry has a building down at the corner of Blanding and Main called The Climb. I would encourage you, if you want a treat, is to go into The Climb. Fortunately, I'm the only female that has a hard hat for The Climb, and I'm very proud of the days that I put it on, because that is the day that someone's unveiling something wonderful. So there are 5 artist studios in The Climb, but beyond that, there are so many young people in this community that are stopping in, and Henry Foster mentors them and tells them about Jesus Christ. So I encourage you, when you have a little leisurely time, to wander up to The Climb, and you will be a much better, brighter, happier person. Welcome, Henry.
Hello, I'm Dottie Park, and I'm pleased to have with me optometric technician and my personal assistant these few weeks, Marissa Bartek.
Good afternoon, Jesse Bullard. We're pleased to have with us today John Clark with Lake Murray Event Rentals as our guest.
I'm Mason Hardy. I've got with me my friend William Hazelden. He's a banking trust specialist, and he's also a pledge brother of our speaker today.
It's on.
This one works, I know. I'm happy to have as my guest today someone who's been a friend since childhood, Carol DeBose. Carol Redding DeBose.
to tell you, I have a bunch of badges for anybody that's missing a badge, or looking for a badge. Look for a badge out on the table, meant to tell you beforehand. If you don't have a badge, leave your badge updated this evening.
Thank you, Donnie. And now health and happiness, none other than Rusty Capass.
That building that Dot was talking about happens to be Andrew and Margaret Clarkson's grandparents, great-grandparents, anyway, the Clarkson house, corner of Landing and Bull. I've been asked to say something today about Alzheimer's, just as a kind of a note. The note indicates that dementia is a general term that describes a group of symptoms associated with memory loss or other thinking skills that affect one's ability to perform everyday activities. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, and it accounts for 60 to 80% of all cases of dementia. As I'm sure many of you know, it is an incredibly cruel disease. And just to make it a little bit more personal, I have his permission to say this. But our speaker today is the son of Elizabeth Nelson Adams, whose sister is married to Jim Smith. You know, we're all intermarried like royalty, I guess. But anyway, but Elizabeth has suffered from Alzheimer's disease for about 12 years now, and it is definitely closing in on her, and it has taken an incredible toll on her husband in particular, but the entire family and extended family, I'm sure. So we have a kind of a personal connection with it because of him. I'm told that Edwin Davis's wife Jane has been to MD Anderson and been told that her cancer is in remission. So that is definitely good news. Henry Moore, who runs the Salvation Army, we refer to him as General Henry Moore, informs me that his sister-in-law, Katrina Walker, died in the last few days. Her funeral will be Thursday. I don't know that this is a very good transition, but it's the best I can do. I get a kick from time to time out of reading obituaries, and some people can be very creative with them, and I saw one today, and it has a personal connection to this club. A fellow by the name of Wade Pearson died. I don't know Wade Pearson, never knew him, but something made me read his obituary, and it turns out that he is Wade Carlisle's uncle. And so we're certainly sorry about your uncle. But he sounds like quite a character. It says that he, after retirement, he bought a cabin on the Edisto River near Denmark, where he said it was the happiest times of his life. Every 4th of July, he could be found eating barbecue and boiled peanuts at the Denmark Country Club. And if you don't know where that is, that's fine with him. In preparing for this thing today, I ran across something on my computer that indicated Columbia Rotary Club Health and Happiness, and I looked it up, and it was the Health and Happiness that I prepared for February the 26th, 2007. I don't always write stuff out, but apparently I did then. And in going through the older members to check on them and see how they were doing and so forth, among them was Ralph Abercrombie, Charles Blackman, Herman Coble, Mac McBride, Sam Pearson, who I think is still with us, Murray Price, Bob Sauer, Carol Sewell, Jim Gravy, and Jim Whitmire. And I thought rather than trying to come up with a bunch of funny stuff today, that I might just go over some of the stuff that I said 12 years ago, because I'm sure none of you remember it. Interestingly, now I tried to call Murray Price again today and I couldn't get him, but this is what I said about Murray Price 12 years ago. Murray just celebrated his 86th birthday. He is now 98. On Saturday, if you ever need a pick-me-up, call this guy. He's part of the ETV documentary, The Vanishing Generation. And ETV has asked him and several other guys to be their guests of honor at their annual fish fry for the legislature. I told him I had just read an interview with Paul Tibbetts, and he told me that he had known Paul when he was stationed at Saipan with the B-24s. Murray is a fantastic guy, and unless he's changed since I talked to him a few months ago, he is still just as sharp as he can be. Also, Jim Whitmire was on the list, who was at NHC at the time, and I had his family's or his permission to tell you this. I want you to know that he insisted that I tell it, as a matter of fact. Let's say his treatment involves repeated temporary catheterizations, and Jim has had to learn to do this on his own. Well, this enormously proud, dignified, modest man had some real concerns about having to have help with this, because it is not necessarily easy to do, especially at his age. One morning, a class of USC students, who are nursing students, showed up to observe this procedure, and our Jim Whitmire conducted this class for these lovely young girls. His nieces and nephews have now begun kidding him about becoming a porn star at age 89. My son had just gone to Camp Shelby in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, to prepare for his first tour of duty in Afghanistan. And he told me that he had a buddy who happened to be black, who told him that he was a whole lot more worried about going to Mississippi than he was to Afghanistan. Then I had some Winston Churchill quotes. I won't give them all to you, but Winston Churchill opines that an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile hoping it will eat him last. And success is the process of going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. And let me say, having watched a little TV this morning, if anybody would like to join me, I'd like to take up a collection and get Angela Merkel, a new fashion consultant. If she doesn't look like a bale of cotton with the middle hook busted, I don't know what does. And what's his name from the new prime minister in England? He can try to be like Trump all he wants, but he's got to comb his hair. He just looks a fright. And anyway, but just a couple of observations. Thank you very much. Y'all have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
We have a late guest arrival.
Oh, okay, Catherine, Mr. Guest.
I have a guest today that just became my guest. Her name is Kathy Perkins, and she's with Theodore and Associates. This is her first time at a Rotary Club, so I've been whispering and talking back in the back, and we decided to just come right in front so everybody can see her. Please help me welcome.
Okay, just quickly, don't forget your car buckets. How can you forget after trustees' comments? They're in the middle of your table. And also, just a reminder to the board that we do have a meeting right after this meeting, board meeting, it'll be quick. And now for our Rotary moment, Michael Collins.
Thank you, President Louisa. Your Rotary Information Committee brings you a Rotary moment now, and if you would direct your attention to the slides. The topic today is about something near and dear to your heart, that is your bill. But related to that is how to make up. You may not have realized there's a relationship there. I want to talk about that. But before we start, look at the bottom right-hand corner. I want to direct your attention to the fact that the Rotary International logo has made some subtle changes. I'm not going to go into those, but I do direct your attention to it. So, your bill, it comes, it seems like every week, but it comes once a quarter, and it looks like this. And it has 4 lines twice a year. That is, the semi-annual dues are number 1. Secondly are some quarterly dues. And then 3rd and 4th are the RI Foundation and the local foundation lines. Now, line 1, semi-annual dues, there's nothing you can do about that. We can talk about that all night. I can't help you on that, I'm sorry. Just belly up to the bar and pay that. But number 2, your quarterly meals, I'm going to talk about a little bit and give you some strategies there. And then 3 and 4, your contributions to the international and local foundations. Those are actually voluntary. When you were inducted, it said our club expects you to contribute to those. We hope you will. But if for some reason you just hard up and you cannot do it, you will not be kicked out of the club if you strike those. I want you to know that. I do hope you will be able to contribute to those, because if you do, our president gets some great brownie points and makes your club look good and all of that. So I encourage you to contribute to lines 3 and 4 of the foundation. What I want to talk to you about, though, is number 2, the quarterly meals. The quarterly meals, you're being billed in advance. That is for the meals coming up in this next quarter. However, you can jockey that around a bit if you have made up in the previous quarter. Now, you can see why it wouldn't work to say, I think I'm going to be out of town the next quarter and I'm going to be gone, and you can't do that. But you can look back at your previous quarter, and if you have made up somewhere, you can get credit for that and not have to pay that portion of your bill. So, what you might do is this. You can take, I can see this better. You can see the line there. If you have made up somewhere, make a note. I've made up at the Lexington Club, TR Parish, on such and such a date, missing the Columbia meeting on such and such a date. Note that on your bill. Or you might say, I also made up at the West Metro Club, such and such a date, made up missing a Columbia meeting on such and such a date. Now, each of those meetings is worth how much? $14. That's how much our meals are. So you can say 14 times 2 is 28. Deduct that from your top line there, and you see you come out okay. At least you're not being penalized by making up somewhere. So there's a double benefit there. Most clubs don't charge 14. Okay, so you're coming out a little bit ahead, but you're also having the benefit of making up with some great clubs. If you go to TR's club, for example, you might hear him doing Health and Happiness. They're outrageously funny over there. If you go to the West Metro Club, you'll hear some interesting facts about Rotary. Each club has its personality, and I invite you to make up and remind you that you will not be penalized on your own invoice, because you can deduct that. Now, the other thing I want to invite you to do, don't just start marking up your bill willy-nilly, because there are 2 things you need to do to be able to do that. Number 1, you need to be keeping a calendar, and number 2, you need to send an email when you make up. So, keeping your calendar. Everybody's got a calendar. When you go make up someplace, make a note on your calendar. I made up at Eau Claire Club on this date for a Miss Columbia meeting. Because a quarter from now, you're not going to remember that. You're going to need to refer back to your calendar. In a second, what's the first rule of the 4-way test? Is it the truth? This is a great way to support the truth. So you can't be marking up your bill without having a little calendar to help support it. Now, I've never been asked by our club to substantiate when I've made up somewhere. But if they do, I've got a backup calendar. Second thing I said, send an email. So if you make up somewhere, all you gotta do is send an email to the new Debbie. The new Debbie is Brad Henry. No, Brad. Is that right? Brad?
Yes, sir. You're right.
That's right, Brad Henry. He is our new Debbie, and his address is there. His address is on your table. There's some handouts here. You make up to send him a simple email saying, Brad, I made up at such and such a club, such and such a date for a Miss Columbia meeting on such and such. In addition, I add this line. To my knowledge, this keeps me at 100%. So if you're trying to track 100% attendance and you want somebody to let you know if their records are different from yours, that's a good chance to find out about it. Basically, those two things, send an email saying when and where, and keep your calendar, and then you can adjust your invoice accordingly. That's your Rotary moment. Thank you.
Michael, and now to introduce our speaker, Mason Hart.
Today's program is a fun and personal program for me, and as I was thinking about giving this introduction over the last month, I realized that I can run down some rabbit trails, so I'm going to stick with the script today, and I apologize for that. Julian Adams' father and my father grew up together here in Columbia, and Julian and I have known each other and been friends since childhood. In college at Sewanee, that's the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, we became fraternity brothers, along with William Hazelton, who's here today. Julian visited me in Barcelona on his way over to study architecture in Florence, Italy, and I visited him in Los Angeles. He was making movies. Needless to say, we have and we share some stories. Some of them are pretty epic. I'm not going to go into those at all right now, mainly because Julian gets the microphone after I do. Today, you're going to hear part of Julian's story to date. He's a man in progress in life. And you're going to hear part of the stories that he's helped bring to the big screen. Julian is the son of Weston Adams and Elizabeth Nelson Adams. You heard a little bit about that today. Born in Colombia, he spent his childhood in South Carolina and Malawi, Africa. Julian graduated from the University of the South with a degree in fine arts and also earned his master's of architecture degree from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He's the brother of Robert Adams VI, Weston Adams III, and Wallace Adams Riley. While practicing architecture with Stephen and Wilkinson in Columbia, Adams worked on such projects as the Matthew Perry United States Courthouse, the Horry County Judicial Center, and the U.S. Army Rangers headquarters in Fort Stewart, Georgia. In 2003, Julian began to further his interest in filmmaking by making small films on the weekends. During this period, he and his father, Weston, wrote what would become the feature film, The Last Confederate. The Adamses ultimately produced The Last Confederate, which won 10 awards on the film festival circuit and was released by Think Film. It is the story of Weston's great-grandparents, Captain Robert Adams and Evelyn McCord Adams of Philadelphia. The film stars Julian Adams, Amy Redford, Tippi Hedren, Mickey Rooney, and Edwin McCain. Julian then produced with John Watson and Penn Desham and co-starred in The Phantom from RCR Media Group, Trilogy Entertainment Group, and Solar Filmworks. The submarine thriller tells the story of the Russian submarine K-129 and its failed attempt to launch a nuclear missile at Pearl Harbor in 1968. The film was written and directed by Todd Robinson and stars Ed Harris, David Duchovny, and William Fichtner. Julian produced and co-starred in The Last Full Measure, from Roadside Attractions, written and directed by Todd Robinson, and starring Samuel L. Jackson, Ed Harris, William Hurt, Christopher Plummer, Peter Fonda, and Diane Ladd. The Last Full Measure will be released October 25th this year by Roadside Attractions. This is a powerful and heartfelt film. I've already seen it. That I hope everyone here will see and tell their friends on October 25th. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Julian Adams.
Thank you very much. Mason is one of my oldest and greatest friends, and I'm very honored to be here. When you're gone from Columbia, I grew up here, as Mason said, and I have a lot of friends and family and cousins. My Uncle Jim is over there, and a lot of friendly faces out there. you realize how great of a city this is and the community here. I spent a long time in Los Angeles, which is the most transient place on earth. My little 4-year-old, she was born there. And now I think about the fact that she's here at Heathwood and life is good for her. Los Angeles is, I remember when I first moved there, you wake up 5 years later and you don't know anybody in the city because people cycle in and out of it so quickly. But here I can sit here and I can look out and I can see people I've known my whole life at every table. Cousins, friends, and that is what I want for my daughter. So being in Columbia has been a great thing for me. The film, the last full measure is coming out October 25th, and I'll get to that in a moment. But this, and I'm happy to speak about these films I've made, but as a filmmaker, you're really a messenger to, we're really telling other people's stories. So my story is kind of ancillary compared to the Vietnam veterans that I'm supporting at the moment. These guys, I've worked 15 years to get their story told, and I've stuck with it because they deserve it. And you go through this process of making a movie, and it takes a long time and a lot of money, and it's an endurance race, really. It's not like writing a novel where you have control, when you're writing something. I've written scripts, and I've directed things, and I've acted in things, but when you're writing, you have absolute control over your destiny in a way. You can write a story, and no one has to pay you to do that. You can kind of do it on your own, and you can determine your own future. But to make a movie, you have to first write it, or hire a writer, which I've done as well. But in the end, you need, an army of 500 people to get the movie made. Especially if it's a movie of, the movie. I'm going to show you some clips in a minute of the last full measure. A movie like this, you'll see, you can't do by yourself because it requires, we shot a Vietnam battle. We went to Thailand for a month and shot this battle. We used real Hueys from Vietnam, and the Thai army loaned us. We shot half the movie in Atlanta and have all these big actors in it. Well, when you're trying to get to that scale of filmmaking, it literally requires 1,000 people. And I'm just one in the machine of people who made this movie. But it was the journey for this film, and I want to sort of focus what I'm saying today about this film because it's about a man who died in Vietnam in 1966, and the lives of the men he saved have become my friends over 15 years. I was at a film festival 14 years ago in Lake Tahoe, and Mickey Rooney was with us, and we were having a big old time, and my dad was with us, and my dad was a groomsman in Mickey's 9th wedding, so Mickey was getting married, he and Jan Legler were renewing their vows, and Mickey became a pal, and we brought Mickey to Columbia, and we had a big time, right? So we were showing this movie, and it was my first movie. I didn't really know anything about filmmaking. I was shooting movies on the weekends, and it was like jumping off the cliff without a parachute. So we were showing this film, and we just had a great reception from this audience. And so this director walked up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I'm doing this Vietnam movie. I'd like you to be in it." And I said, "Well, I'd love to." And the joke I told the other night that Mason heard was that he said, "Well, meet me in Thailand in 14 years." And it was. We both laughed about it, but the reality was, from that moment to now, it has been almost 15 years. This movie is going to be released, but that's the endurance race that filmmaking is. If you sort of, I've had 1,000 hilarious conversations with other people, and they say, "Well, how long have you been working on this movie?" And I was like, "About half of my life, almost." I mean, it's literally, that's what it's taken. But in the end, if you look at what John Clark sitting over there will tell you, that what these men go through and what our veterans go through and the soldiers, what they experience and they come home with, especially the guys in Vietnam. When they came home, as you all well know, most of you in this room are older than I am, but what they experienced, it left a hole in them, and they came back, and now they're trying. They've been trying since then to get their lives back, on course, and the degrees of post-traumatic stress for these guys varies greatly. In the story, you'll see Ed Harris plays one of the characters in the story, and Samuel L. Jackson, and Peter Fonda, and these great actors, William Hurt. They spent time with us, with the real veterans in this battle. And what they realized in trying to tell the story of these men was that, these men have carried this battle with them since 1966, and it's what happened in the battle. Then I'll show you some footage I'll show you a little bit of a trailer of the film in essence, and then about a 5-minute film, a little sequence that I think you'll appreciate as much as the bit with the actors in it. The other one is about a 5-minute thing that I'd like you to see that shows you the real veterans being interviewed with footage from our film that we cut into their discussion. So as they spent years describing every minute of this battle with us and what happened and how this man deserved the Medal of Honor, that they worked for 34 years to get this young Air Force pararescue jumper the Medal of Honor. So you'll see the real guys in the battle. They'll sort of deliver the message that we've been working on. The film is now done and completed and it's ready to be released. But Cynthia, you about ready to roll this? So the first thing you're going to see is a little clip that's in essence like a trailer. We haven't released the trailers for the previews for the film yet. The first one is a little sort of, is more of what you see in movie trailers. Then immediately following that one, you're going to see a 6 or 7 minute clip that is with these veterans. And I just hope you watch both of these and realize that everybody you see on the screen, every one of these actors, they put their heart and soul into it. And as I was saying, as a filmmaker, you really only have a limited number of films that you have time to make in life. Filmmaking is so difficult, it takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and you can see by the amount of time I put into this single film. Now mind you, I made other movies along the journey to get to this one. But just, as you watch movies, when they tell you when there's an important message tied into this entertainment, you have to know that when people get up at the Oscars or what have you, which I don't typically watch the Oscars because of, I don't know why, it seems to be a lot of it politicized for the wrong reasons. I hope this movie will get that kind of recognition simply for this reason. The guys about in the story is the reason we put our hearts and minds and everything into it. They deserved it. Like I said, I would have given up a long time ago had it not been for my friends who are the Charlie Company veterans. So Cynthia, whenever you're ready.
Hellfire coming in. To him it was like nothing could hurt him. He was there to save lives, and that's what he was doing.
Operation Abilene was one of the bloodiest battles of the entire war. An entire company nearly wiped out but for this PJ's effort. Pararescue jumper. He'll collect combat testimonies personally and prepare a package for a full decorations review.
I've never done a medal review. I don't have time for this.
So, you're the new one. You do work in the Department of Defense, right? If you want the real story about Abilene, you'll need to talk to the mud soldiers. Pits save lives.
Decoration upgrades are rare.
I will get this in next year's bill.
Justice delayed is justice denied.
It was one day, decades ago.
Pittsburgh came into that shitstorm on purpose. I mean, how do you count that?
Duty, commitment, mission. Big one.
Chicks came down, saved lives, evac wounded, died fighting alongside men he never even knew.
Guy saved my life, and it was one small thing that he asked of me. I couldn't do it.
Getting that medal from Pitts might be the only decent thing I get to pull out of that war.
From these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure.
I've been a historian for over 25 years. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of remarkable courage out there. But Bill's story is one at the top.
He's a hero in my mind because it's just not normal for a human being to do what he did under those circumstances.
He didn't have to go out that day, but he chose to.
We were really in a mess on that ground, and he stayed there and helped us.
He wasn't out there as a combat soldier. He was out there to save lives, and he gave his life saving lives.
He was just one brave individual, and I am thankful every day that there are men like him.
Why is he here? He's here. 11 April, 66, and my unit, 180 soldiers, and myself were ambushed by 600 North Vietnamese. One of the worst battles in the war. It started out, we were on a search and destroy operation.
And it was a battalion-size operation, meaning that the 3 rifle companies, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, had separate missions.
And we were looking for a larger North Vietnamese unit.
We walked into this ambush, and nobody could get to us.
Everybody down!
What they had done is they had formed a horseshoe, and we walked right in the center of it, and they closed the end. They had machine guns in the trees, they had artillery zeroed in our area, and they just opened up.
It started off loud. I mean, that's what I remember the most, and that's what I dream about the most since when I have the bad dreams, is how loud it is.
Fire was almost so thick you could see the bullets. I mean, really thick, and that's all you heard for an hour or so.
There was so much firepower that the trees were actually falling.
We were taking heavy casualties. I mean, there was a lot of hollering, a lot of screaming, a lot of mama this and mama that.
I've never heard as much noise, as much crying and praying.
There was 700 guns firing at the same time.
And the first part of it, I couldn't imagine how I could still be there and not be wounded, because guys all around me was getting shot and wounded and killed. And
we had people fetal on the ground. One was a sergeant screaming, "We're all going to die." And these guys were experienced and seasoned veterans.
We were pretty chewed up, so brought our perimeter in a little bit, brought back all the guys that were killed and wounded, brought them back.
They circled the wagons, formed a circle, and they drug their wounded into the middle of the circle. In that middle of the circle was a little hole to where a helicopter could come in, and we're able to drop down about 100 feet before we hit the second layer. Bill's helicopter went in, and they dropped down.
There was a chopper, and I saw someone coming down.
Pitts came from here. He came down on the wire.
I saw the guy coming down through the trees, and I said, excuse my language, I said, what the fuck is he doing coming down here?
I was the first person on the ground to see Pitts.
What's the story, Lieutenant? We've got a 100-meter perimeter. We're taking fire from everywhere.
And I gave him about a 15 to 20-second briefing to tell him that we had wounded, we needed to evacuate, and we had 2 KIA at that time, I believe.
All right, I'm going to need 2 of your guys.
Sure, Airman.
And I was told to go over there and help him. So I went from here over to there to help him load the injured on the litters.
Nothing but your man into the basket.
We got about, I believe it was 8 of them, 8 of the wounded out.
In between time, before they get the litter down there and everything, we'd be clearing and triaging these guys, trying to stabilize them a little bit for the trip.
He went around to the perimeter and distributed ammo and food and first aid and everything, whatever they needed. Then the shit hit the fan again.
Because they were surrounded 360 degrees by the Viet Cong, and they were shooting down at them from the trees. There was no place to hide. Bill just ignored the bullets.
It was extraordinary in the fact that he turned off all the stuff that was going on around him and was determined, committed, and aggressive.
It was the way he carried himself. It was like he was in charge, like nothing could hurt him. He came there to save lives, and that's what he was doing.
That gave us faith, because like those guys say, we're all going to die. It gave us some kind of hope and incentive. It changed the momentum.
The VC started shooting at the helicopter and hit one. And Bill was still on the ground. And he waved him off. He said, I'll get the next one. I'll get the next one out.
They told Pitts he could, he could get on that chopper. As a matter of fact, he was ordered on, I believe, and he said, I'm needed here.
Then I got hit. Pittsburgh tore my uniform off and bandaged me up.
One of the Charlie Company's men was really shot up. and he went and threw a couple bodies on top of him because the VC were coming around and shooting all the wounded.
A Pittsburgher drug 2 dead Americans and laid them on top of me. And as he was running away, he got killed.
I'm sorry about your buddy, man. Why'd he do it? Why'd he do it, man?
He had destination of greatness, and sadly it had to be wasted on saving a bunch of bums like us, you know. If it wasn't for Pitts, you wouldn't be interviewing anybody here today.
He was a brave man. I want to say boy because he was 21, but he was a brave PJ.
It's only one story on thousands of combat stories that could be told. There's lots of heroes out there that we don't know about, but Bill's one hero that I hope we do learn about.
At the risk of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, I award the Medal of Honor to Airman First Class William Hart Pittsburgh.
Watching both of those, I hope that gave you a sense of what we've accomplished here, and I think we're hoping that we're showing now at military bases. We've showed Fort Jackson and Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. We showed the Marines in Paris Island last weekend. We're going to the Air Force Museum in Ohio, to West Point to show the troops there, to Pearl Harbor, and about 15 other bases. So we're trying to share the movie with the troops before it comes out October 25th. But I think these things often are, maybe are more effective if anyone wants to ask a question. I know we've got about 5 minutes, Mason? 5 or 6. If anybody has a question, no pressure if you don't, but if you don't have any questions, I appreciate you passing the word to your friends about this movie. I think the guys the story we're telling about these men, they deserve everyone to see this and to understand what they sacrificed. And, yeah, go ahead.
In theater?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this was Operation what year?
Abilene, 1966.
66 and?
Abilene, Operation Abilene. Yeah.
Where was it?
Zakham Mai.
What part of it?
I couldn't tell you geographically. I mean, it's, I'd have to look at the map to tell you. I've learned about it, on paper, so I don't know. I think it's, an hour away from Saigon. Okay. Yes.
Other than the obvious horror of Vietnam, what message do you think that most Americans will get when they see this?
I think that a few things. One, obviously, it's to honor the troops and then they fought. But I think what you'll see in it is that at least the reaction we've gotten from troops and veterans, which we've shown it about 15 times on 15 different military bases. The post-traumatic stress story that's told in the film. Because what you see in the film is obviously, as you saw from the trailer that I showed you, you see the story about the political reason when this young man was, the Medal of Honor was put up for the Medal of Honor by the guys on the ground. But they went on with their lives from 66. When the internet came to be in the 90s, they got back together and realized that it was downgraded to the Air Force Cross. So what this movie is about is these guys getting back together and figuring out how to get this young man the medal. So what you see in it is these men telling their stories. So you go back to the battle and you see what happened to them. So it's about them and their families and how they processed, the aftermath of that war and what they experienced. I think that part of it, from my witnessing in these screenings and talking to the veterans after the screenings, and I mean veterans of every war, At Paris Island, I had a couple of Marines came up after the screening who'd done a number of tours, and they were touched by that message that these veterans of Vietnam, needed to expel, their demons, and this movie was very helpful to them in terms of saying, hey, this is what they went through, and they deserve, our best effort being treated well. Yes?
My son's a student at Wofford, and he's going to spend what they call the winter term. It's a month term in Vietnam. Has there been any pushback from the fact that our relationship with Vietnam is so good now? They love us. They really are great partners.
Well, it's been interesting. We shot in Thailand, right on the Choir. We were right down from the bridge of the River Kwai, so we shot the film. But one of our co-producers and one of my best buddies shooting this movie, his name is Travis Wade. Travis was a Marine and now is an actor and a producer. So he is currently in Vietnam at this moment. He went to an installation yesterday where veterans of the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese veterans, they're receptive to healing. I'll put it that way. In my experience with one of my close family friends who was a Marine in Vietnam, he went to Vietnam about 5 years ago, and his experience was, he met with Vietnam veterans on the North Vietnamese side, and what I've seen, and look, I'm no expert on the Vietnam War. I'm an expert on this battle because of my time living with these men and telling their story. I guess maybe if I'm answering your question correctly, there seems to be healing coming from them, from what I witness. Again, I don't see it from some, global perspective. I see it from the perspective of a filmmaker who has been in the trenches studying this battle. Although you stumped me on one question, which was pretty good. The point is that yes, I think they're healing. That's my overview of it. Yeah.
Did you have any interaction or contact with the North Vietnamese veterans?
No, not while we were making the film, but one of our guys is over there now. He was in contact with them. But the reality is that, sorry, this wasn't about them.
Right.
It's about our guy.
Sure.
No offense to him. But,
yeah.
I'm an American, so I'm telling an American story. I have people come to me often about stories, and they say, hey, why didn't you do so-and-so and so-and-so? And I said, well, I made my movie. If you want to tell that story, you can make your movie. I mean, that's not, I'm just kind of joking, but it's a good question, but you can only do so much as a filmmaker in terms of approaching the story you're trying to tell. Yeah?
How many of those 181 made it out alive?
Well, there were a friend of ours who was played in the movie by Ed Harris. He's a close friend of mine. I talk to Fred every day, almost. He's a wonderful guy, and that battle hit him hard. He was one of the survivors, but there were, I think, about 40 casualties out of 100. It was actually about 150 guys. Fred was just a tad off on the number, but there were more. There were 800. The D800 was the North Vietnamese battalion that was in there. There were 800 of them versus about 140 something of our guys. Now it's not a solid number because we had Charlie Company, Alpha and Bravo were supposed to support them, but they got cut off by basically walls of bamboo. But some medics did get through, and a few other guys were involved. Some guys who were awarded medals on this battle were not Charlie Company. So it's a loose number, but it's around about 150. But there were about 40 to 50 casualties, and another Medal of Honor was given that day to an Army guy. So that was part of the political problem with it. It was a bad day. Some bad decisions were made. And the reason Pitsenbarger was put off in terms of getting the medal for 34 years was because they didn't want to put 2 medals on a single day. At least that was what I was told by some of the guys. They thought that they didn't want to put, so he got downgraded to an Air Force Cross, which launched the guys he saved on a 34-year mission to get the medal. That's a long answer to your question.
I was in college in 1966 when this battle took place, and because of all of the protests that were going on in the college was in, I think people who fought that war didn't get enough respect.
Yeah.
And even today, in some cases, they don't. I know that some fellow graduates of my university, some really brilliant guys, fabulous people, died over there. Probably people like this fellow who got the Medal of Honor. And I hope that your movie will have lots of people see it and bring the respect that those people who fought that war deserve.
I agree. 100% with you. Thank you, Mason.
I was going to make a joke about sharing the stage with a movie star, but I'm actually about to burst into tears. So that was a powerful message, Julian. Thank you so much. And we all appreciate your spending the time with us today. And just remember, no matter how far you go, how famous you become, that we loved you first. We're your biggest fans. And this is a token of our appreciation for all your fan mail. Opening.
Next week, we don't have a meeting because it's Labor Day. The week after that, we have the president of the Central Carolina Community Foundation, Joanne Turnquist. And the week after that, we have the new president of USC, Bob Kasman. So get some guests and bring them in.
Happy Labor Day, everyone. So.